All right. On today's episode, we're going to talk about DIY versus hiring a property manager. Mainly, we're going to be focusing on the do-it-yourself portion of this. We have to ask ourselves really, really hard questions before getting into this. One is, are we ready to scale? That means, are we ready to make the investment to do this right, to be professionals, to actually create a full-time hosting or property management business? Do we have the money set aside to invest in the softwares? Do we have the time set aside to deal with things on the nights and the weekends, which is when most of the problems happen in short-term property management business? Or are we looking at this as a strictly passive income opportunity? If you're looking at this as a strictly passive income opportunity, I would encourage you to look at a great property manager. But I want to encourage those who want to go on this alone. I want to be a big encouragement because I've done it. I've gone down that road. I've hired property managers. I've done it myself. I've created a property management company. We set out to be the best in class, and I know what it takes. So I want to encourage you. Everybody can do it. You just have to have the time and resources to dedicate to it. And today we're going to answer some of those questions. We're going to ask some hard questions, and we're going to answer some of those hard questions. And so stay tuned for more. This is not an exhaustive list, but there are 3 things we need to consider when starting our own property management business. And I would suggest that if you're going to DIY, you need to think about this as a property management business owner. Very hospitality focused and very professional. So if you're going to be a professional business, you need a professional website. So question yourself, do I have the skills to build this website? And if I don't, do I have the funds to create a website, to hire somebody else to create this website? And where do I integrate it? Second thing we need to consider is, if you're going to try to keep costs way, way low, one thing to do is just put it on Airbnb, or just put it on VRBO, or just put it on booking.com. The drawback to that is you're cutting yourself short on marketing, on channels, on bookings. And so consider all of the expenses you have with your mortgage, all of the expenses you have with running a business, and is that going to be good enough? And so if that's not good enough, if you come to the conclusion, man, I need a website, I need to be on all the channels, then I would suggest buying a property management software. We use a product called HostAway. That is not an endorsement, although I do love it. That's just a product that we use, but I would consider buying a property management software. And what that PMS will give you is one place to do all your communication, one place to look at all your calendars, and then you can create admin roles to allow your employees to go in there and create owner reports, to do all the guest communications, to add photos, to add blurbs, to change copy, and everything else. It kind of gives you one pane of glass to manage your whole business from. And so what I would say is, do you have the budget to do that? So if you don't want to just be on one OTA, which is Airbnb and Booking and those providers, and if you do want to create a website, then you'll need a property management software. All right. All that being said, these are a lot of expenses in order to maximize your short-term rental property revenue. If you're going into this and you think there are not expenses in setting up a property management business, then you're a little mistaken. Can you do it in 2020, 2021, when you could put a tent out in the middle of a town and rent it on Airbnb? Definitely could. Times are changing, and I would say you need to approach this business as if you are a professional. And if you're going to approach it with a hospitality and professional mindset, then you need to count on incurring some expenses, like the PMS system, like creating a website, like pricing software. Now, that being said, if this is your first property, it probably doesn't make sense. I would say at 5 properties, maybe 4, depending on how much revenue it brings in, it would make sense to incur a lot of these expenses. Other than that, you may want to consider a really, really good property management company until you can reach your scale, unless you just don't want to reach scale. And this is always going to be a passive endeavor. So that being said, the epiphany is, does it make sense to incur these expenses with the amount of properties that you currently own? And, or are you going to grow? And if you are going to grow, then start looking at these expenses for your future growth. So let's focus on the website. Should I have a website created? This can be very expensive depending on who you get to do it. There are some folks out there who specialize on the short-term rental industry who do website creation. You can find them on the internet. And if it's done right, there is an ongoing cost to host it. So think about the upfront cost to build it, and then the ongoing cost to host it, and then the personnel, that might be you, to kind of manage it. Every day you go in and you realize, oh man, these pictures aren't loading. Oh, the prices aren't showing up. Maybe the cleaning fees aren't translating into the owner reports. So just think about that. Do I have the person power? Do I have the time? Do I have the budget to create this website? Now, that being said, this can be absolutely amazing for your business. So you can market this website. You can make more money from your website than you can from the OTAs. You can control the crowd. You can have repeat guests. Having your own website creates a lot of good. Not only does it give you a professional look and appeal to the audience, but it also allows you to scale your business in a way that you might not be able to on the OTAs, meaning you own your own crowd, you own your own marketing, and it can potentially be down the road way more profitable. That brings me to the second point we talked about at the top of the show. Can anyone really maximize their short-term rental business by just using Airbnb? I would say the past couple of years, folks were actually doing that. A lot of folks were making a killing by just putting it out there on Airbnb. It didn't matter if you were on page 17 or if you were on page 1. If you had any type of property, people were traveling, people were spending money, and it just made sense. Now we turn the page to 2023. There are nearly double the Airbnb listings as there were a year ago. So we've got a lot more supply, and then we have a lot less demand. Maybe not a lot less. In some markets, we have a lot less demand. But overall, we have less demand. So think about this, close to double the supply in 1 year, and then the demand goes down by 25%. So now, if we're not a professional, or if we don't take this business seriously, if we don't really, really try to maximize the guest experience, that means design and fully loading your house, shampoos, and anything else you can think of. We'll have another episode on that. Then we need to consider, are we cut out for the property management game? Because it's not going to be as easy moving forward as it was in the past. That means we should probably be on more than one OTA. And if we are on more than one OTA, that means we probably need a property management software. And if we're going to have a property management software and we're going to be taken seriously, then we probably need a website. So think about these things when planning your Airbnb business. Can you still do really well? Absolutely. Is it going to be harder? Absolutely. Will there be a little bit of an exodus from people who thought that this was just going to be passive and easy money? Absolutely. Think about that and where you are. And if you still love the business, but you want it to be more of a passive endeavor, consider hiring the best of the best property management. And we have several ways that you can figure that out. Are they a great property manager? Am I going to get nickel and dimed? Am I actually going to be profitable? Because with some property management companies, you can be way more profitable than you could on some. You can't. Keep that in mind. The third thing we talked about at the top of the show was this idea of a property management software. Can I maximize my listing without one? We talked about that. Does it make sense to incur this expense with the amount of property management properties that I own? What is the inflection point? And am I committed to doing this full time? I would say if you're not committed to doing this full time and you only have one or two properties, then it probably doesn't make sense, because there's a lot of expenses that go along with building a property management company that you incur, that it doesn't make sense to spend that money unless you have intent on building a full-on property management company, a full-on hosting company. So think about that. And then I would encourage you, if you reach that inflection point and you say, man, I am here, or by gosh, I've saved up $20,000 and I'm going to create this property management business come hell or high water, then think about this. Think about going out and researching the top 4 or 5 PMS systems, doing a demo, and figuring out what works best for you. What kind of needs are you going to service? What kind of user interface appeals to you? How many folks are you going to have as admins on the back end? Does it have those capabilities? Does it have integration with a pricing software? Does it have easy integration with the OTAs? Does it have integration with your cleaning company? Those are just a handful of the questions to ask. There are many, many more, but I would encourage you to go out, do your research, and find that out. We can also help with that. So just to recap, we talked about a few things today, 3 main things that you need to think about when developing your property management company. There are several other things, but the main point I guess I want to get across today is the main metaphor I want to draw is that this is just like any other business. Business takes investments, and short-term rental business, the property management business, is no different. If I'm a owner of one piece of property and I want to put it on a short-term rental program, I'm going to look to a business that is professional, that is agile, that has a website, that can market me effectively, and that is not going to nickel and dime me. I'm looking for those things. And I'm also looking for somebody who's going to treat the folks who stay at my house really, really well. I'm going to be looking for somebody who treats me really, really well. And so I would say that this draws immense parallels to any other business out there. Customers want to be treated well. Vendors want to be treated well. The whole 9 yards. And in this business, you actually have 2 customers. One customer that's transient, that comes in every few days, every week, every month, however you're going to do it. And then you have another customer who is the homeowner. And you really have the hospitality mindset on both fronts. You have to be able to produce on both fronts. And so think about this like any other business. You're going to have to make those investments, time, people, software, etc. And we have to make those investments in order to scale this business both economically and physically. So it's exciting to think about. If you can get a plan and you can get a 1, 2, 3 sheet, like these are the things that I need to do, and you're ready, then it's doable. If you just want to make an investment in a property, again, I've said it 100 times, if you just want to make an investment in a property and you have 1 or 2 properties, consider getting a property management company that will treat you right and maximize your revenue. So if there's one thing you can take away from today's show, go back home and think about all the things that you might need to maximize your property management business. Add the cost of these items to an analysis of any short-term rental. So you want to add your property management software, you want to add your pricing software, you want to add marketing, you want to add cleaners and maintenance, you want to add the time to manage all of these items, you want to add the guest communications and being active every day, you want to add the fact that if you're going to do this yourself, that things are going to be happening on Fridays and Saturday nights when you're trying to spend time with family and friends. That's when most of the issues arrive or arise in a short-term rental. But think about those things and look at yourself hard. Man, do I really want to get in the hospitality business? And I think the answer for a lot of you is yes. And some folks who are looking at this as a passive income, maybe not. But just take a good hard look at those things, add those costs up, and see if it makes sense to do it. at 1, 2, 3 properties. My hunch is unless you have a property producing 150, 200, maybe it would have to produce even more. The cost to justify all of these extra things might not be worth it. But there is an inflection point. And depending on the house and depending on the revenue of the house, it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. So think on those things, create a list, add it up, and decide if it's going to make sense for you. That wraps up today's episode. Thank you guys for joining. Until next week, we'll be hanging in there like a booger on a coat hanger.